Thank you. All right, thanks Arthur for that. It's kind of cool to get up here and to be able to follow the Cisco guys. I actually implemented OpenDNS at a previous job, and it was really cool to see that get acquired. So let's jump into my content. Almost 4 years ago today, I sat in the audience of a customer conference much like this one. That, in addition to that conference being held on roughly the same day of the year, it too was that company's second annual customer conference. And it was a conference that was filled with thought-provoking and informative sessions that were devoid of sales pitches. So me being there as a now, it was the second time I'd attended that conference, and for a guy that's pretty skeptical of conferences in general, I will say that I was pleasantly surprised and completely at ease being there. So as I sat in the closing keynote of this conference, I found myself wrestling with a concept that the speaker was talking about. It was something peculiar, and in the moment I probably would have said, this is absurd. And he was saying that software is eating the world. All right. Software is eating the world. And I don't know, it just struck me. I think I was caught up by the illogical notion of something intangible like software doing something physical like eating, let alone eating something as big as the world. As I set that reservation aside and started to listen a little bit more, things started to click. It fell into place for me, and by the end of the keynote, I was so impressed by what he was saying that I wanted to go do some additional research. I wanted to understand who this guy was and why he was so confident making such bold claims in this keynote. I was only further impressed as I found out that his keynote was just a verbal summary of a longer article that he'd published some 3 years prior to that day. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that phrase or the article that kind of coined it, it was coined by Mark Andreessen, co-founder and partner of Andreessen Horowitz, a successful Silicon Valley venture capital firm. Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z for short, was also the lead and repeat investor for the company that was hosting that event, the market-defining then startup IDaaS company, Okta. So with that as background and introduction, I want to introduce and pose a two-part question. The first one is, how can I be more agile, or how can I help my company be more agile without sacrificing security? The second one is, what one technology or process, old or otherwise, am I or my company clinging onto that's like a technological boat anchor? So, moving forward, fast forward a few years with the benefit of time, we're starting to see the reality of all those things that Mark was speaking about all those years ago. From a technology perspective, there's innovation at every layer of the stack, from platform to application, from infrastructure to applications to platforms, APIs, and devices. And in terms of people, organizations today have to interact with and enable more users than they ever had, like exponentially more users than they ever had before, because it isn't just employees, it's contractors and it's partners, it's suppliers, and it's customers now. Basically, anybody that has any kind of relationship with the business also has a digital experience that goes along with it, and it's up to the IT leadership or the technology leadership within those companies to curate, manage, and enable that technology for those users regardless of what device they're using and what network they're on. So with that, we can say, indeed, software is eating, and as a result, transforming the world. And in this new world, we see a few major paradigm shifts for IT. So the first paradigm shift is that integration is everything. So whether we like it or not, we live in a best-of-breed world. And in a best-of-breed world, ease of use, management, and security all depend on how well you can integrate with people. The second paradigm shift is that people are the perimeter. So if you've got users that are coming in from any device, from any network, from any location, and they're trying to access any application, they themselves become the security control point. The third shift is that every company is a technology company. Integrations and security, those are really familiar concepts for people, something they've been dealing with for a long time. But the idea of becoming a technology company is going to be very, very foreign for some people. This is probably the most important one that they're trying to embrace at this time too, and it's beneficial. Right now, we're benefited with the advent of things like infrastructure as a service, the API economy, and microservices that have lowered the bar of entry, right? It's made it easier to innovate. So there's no longer any excuses for companies to remain relevant and to remain competitive. They've got to integrate, they've got to participate in this new paradigm. And it's this paradigm shift that's leading us more and more to see just how important identity is. Because in a world where integration is everything, identity becomes that connective tissue that stitches together this diverse technology ecosystem. It becomes that one constant. And when people are the perimeter, identity becomes the lens through which we can monitor our assets and the control point through which we can we can protect those assets as well. And when every company is a technology company, identity is the key to enabling that secure, personalized, and engaging experience. So to take advantage of this and to realize the benefits of these opportunities, we've got to think different and we've got to shift our focus. So we know that in this new SaaS world, our digital assets are everywhere. This isn't a bad thing, right? We've been able to free ourselves from the burden of managing infrastructure and managing those application stacks and dealing with patching. But what it's doing is forcing us to take a different look at our security practices. In order to effectively architect, deploy, and secure in the modern enterprise, we need to have an identity-centric security model. Why? Because it's pretty clear that our identities are under attack. And this is quantified in the Verizon Data Breach Report. When you break down the top 20 data breaches from 2018, you can see that identity-related breaches bookend the top 20. And you'll also see that these indirect credential or secret compromises, such as phishing and keylogging, are pretty heavy hitters as well. And then if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll start to find, you'll come across this quote that I found in there. Well, that font didn't translate very well. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite quotes, though. At most, 6% of breaches can be attributed to patchable vulnerabilities this year. And a third of those, it still involve phishing or credentials. And I summarize that with this. I say, real hackers just log in, and when they're not just logging in, they're really just trying to find more ways to log in. So that's not to say that patch management and vulnerability scanning isn't an important thing. It's just to highlight the fact that you've got to take a different approach to security in the world that we live in now. So I hope at this point we can agree on the fact that identity is indeed the new security perimeter. If you're skeptical, hopefully you can agree with me that it's at least an important component of your security strategy. And how is this? So some of this is a little bit Okta-y, but it should translate. If you've got a different identity and access system, a lot of these things I'm talking about should translate, right? So we look at it and we say there's 4 pillars that are going to contribute to an identity-centric security model. So to start, you've got to be able to centralize that identity. A modern IAM system can help you do this by supporting modern federated protocols such as SAML and OIDC. And that benefits us because, well, there's 2 things. One, it helps us reduce the credential fatigue that our users are suffering. As we introduce more and more applications into their lives, there's more and more times they have to go and log into those applications. In addition to helping our end users, though, it's going to help us reduce our surface area of attack because now we've got less places where we have credentials sitting, and we've got less places where we need to go and transmit those credentials across the wire that's going to open them up for sniffing or for some sort of compromise. To further reduce that surface area of attack, we need to move on to the next pillar. And for this, we need to have good account hygiene. At Okta, we refer to that as lifecycle management. This is not to be confused with threat lifecycle management that's available from LogRhythm, although it is a pretty good indication that great companies and people do think alike. So in Okta, LCM is usually referred to or referenced when we're talking about operational efficiency, trying to make sure that users have access to their applications on the first day that they start work so they can be effective. But when we look at it through a security lens, what could be more important than making sure that we've terminated all of the access that somebody has in all of the systems when they leave, right? Employee leaves, we want to make sure that they don't still have access to the CRM. Or when somebody moves or changes roles, somebody converts over from accounting to IT or IT to accounting, they don't have accounting roles left over in the ERP. And then third, oh good, I didn't mean to click that button, bad habit. So third, we need to ensure that there's strong authentication everywhere. This is something that we would, everybody's going to naturally say, hey, that directly aligns to security, this makes sense. And it would be easy to go in there and say, hey, strong authentication, we're just going to do MFA everywhere. But that would be a terrible user experience and they would all revolt. And then we wouldn't have jobs, or at least we wouldn't have people that work at our jobs. So we say strong authentication needs to be something that's adaptive and contextual, right? There's no need to burden a user with multi-factor authentication when they're performing a low-risk transaction from a known or trusted device. On the opposite side of that, there's no reason to even entertain an authentication request when it's coming from a known bad actor or a known bad source or network. And then the fourth thing we've got on here, and it is last but certainly not least, is we need to enable visibility and response. Hopefully at this point it is painfully clear that identity is a critical component in there, and it provides some of the most meaningful security context and security information that you're going to be able to ingest into a SIEM. And if harnessed appropriately, is also going to be some of the most actionable data. And that is where this integration with Okta and LogRhythm comes in, right? So these are two great companies with very innovative and complementary products that multiply in value when you start to integrate them. Let's dig into how this looks like. So LogRhythm uses Okta's APIs to ingest that identity-related data. This is going to be anything from operational logs, jobs that are running within Okta, administrative actions, somebody signing in and making changes. But the more interesting thing that you're going to find in there is you're going to see all the authentication attempts for users that are signing in, not just Okta, but into all of the applications that orb around it, where they're logging in from, what devices they're using. All of this data is then combined with other system log, security and machine data, as well as with LogRhythm's forensic sensor data. And the next-gen SIEM then enriches this data and ingests it into the next-gen SIEM platform and displays it into an Okta-specific dashboard. And as you can see, there are powerful, adaptive, and customizable dashboards that are made available to help a security analyst understand what's going in and around Okta. This is great for a security analyst to be able to see things like top MPE rules, top common events, and much more. And all of that can be used to build on what was previously discussed on by Cisco when they were talking about Pat, the guy that had suffered that malware attack. If you call back to that, we can change that sentence. So now it's Pat, the CEO, who recently changed his password and then suffered this malware attack. And just imagine what that additional context and that identity-centric information is going to do to help a security analyst tune and adapt their response to incidents. And enrichment and context are great, but you can also use this data from an identity system to help you trigger alerts. With LogRhythm collecting data from Okta, an admin can go in and define AI rules that would alert when specific conditions are met, obviously. LogRhythm's developed a handful of out-of-the-box rules to help you understand when API tokens are created, indicators of dictionary attack, multi-factor authentication, and account lockout, right? These are all critical ones. The number of different AI alerts that somebody can come up with is very diverse. It's going to vary by organization, and it's even more vast when you start to look at it in the context of a powerful platform where you can correlate and enrich all of this data across multiple sources. I was supposed to say this in my best infomercial voice. I don't have it, but wait, there's more. Seeing this data seeing data, raising alert logs is going to do wonders. But to reduce your time to detect incidents, right? That's a big deal. We see mean time to detects are ridiculously large. But what does it mean for your mean time to resolve? So Okta and LogRhythm have developed multiple smart response plugin actions. And in order to be able to really truly move the ball forward, we need integrations that are not only there to help you see what's going on, but to give you the ability to rapidly respond and remediate so you can contain those threats. So now when alerts fire in LogRhythm, you can make use of these smart response actions that are available for Okta. And again, making use of Okta APIs, right? So there's no additional software you need to install, just plug in the appropriate information. And you've got smart response actions like get user information, clear Okta sessions, suspend user, reset user password. And when you've built an environment that has identity at the center, the power of changing or toggling somebody's access within Okta becomes very powerful. We've got a couple of different SaaS applications in there, right? You start to look at the idea of being able to change one thing and have it affect all of those diverse systems becomes very powerful. And it allows me to kind of harken back to that same story about Pat, and we can add another sentence in there. So we cleared his sessions, suspended his account, and reset his password to contain the breach while we worked to remove the malware. Right? That's powerful. And this all sounds good in theory, but actually we've got one of my favorite customers, LogRhythm, as Arthur mentioned, that's using this. This was actually, a lot of this work was done by Greg Foss, Senior Manager of Threat Management here at LogRhythm. And this is something that they use. Greg and I have had a handful of conversations, and he's told me about all the cool things they're doing, and I'm constantly impressed. So if you get a chance to find Greg in the halls, stop him, or do something, learn more about it. There's a couple of blogs, and there's a webinar that's been recorded that's on YouTube that dives into this a little bit deeper. So, I don't know, to close, I started with a little bit of a story. I wanted to just close with like a call to action. My call to action is take something away from this conference and do it. Act on it. Be willing to change the status quo. When it comes to driving innovation, there's nobody in the business or in an organization that's better placed, that has a better skill set and a better understanding of what's going on than the people here in this room. So you've probably seen people play with the CIO title, Chief Innovation Officer. I challenge everybody to go out there, redefine your own role, make it so that you become the Director of Innovative Security, the Network Innovation Engineer, or the Principal Security Innovator. With that, if you've got more questions and want to talk more about what's going on with Okta, we are here over at the booth. I'd love to have a conversation. I'll turn it back over to Arthur.
Great stuff. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
It's up on the mic.